Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little sweet girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, but especially by her grandmother. She didn't know what else to give the child. Once, she gave her a little cap made of red velvet. Since it suited her so well and she wanted to wear it all the time, she was known as Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here is a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is sick and weak, and they will do her good. Set off before it gets hot, and when you go, walk nicely and don't stray from the path, or you might fall and break the bottle, and your grandmother will have nothing. And when you get to her room, don't forget to say good morning, and don't peep into every corner." "I'll do everything right," Little Red Riding Hood promised her mother, and shook her hand on it. The grandmother lived out in the forest, half an hour from the village. When Little Red Riding Hood entered the forest, she met the wolf. But she did not know what a wicked animal he was and was not afraid of him. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," he said. "Thank you, wolf." "Where are you going so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To grandmother's." "And what are you carrying under your apron?" "Cake and wine. We baked yesterday, so I'm bringing grandmother something to cheer her up and make her strong again." "Little Red Riding Hood, where does your grandmother live?" "Another good quarter of an hour into the forest, under the 3 big oak trees. There is her house, down in the hazel bush hedges. You must know the place," said Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young thing she is! She'll be even more delicious than the old woman. I must act cunningly so that I can catch them both." So he walked for a little while beside Little Red Riding Hood. Then he said, "Look, Little Red Riding Hood, at the beautiful flowers all around. Why don't you look around? I believe you don't even hear how sweetly the birds are singing. You are walking along as if you were on your way to school, and it's so delightful out here in the woods." Little Red Riding Hood looked up, and when she saw the sunlight dancing through the trees and the lovely flowers around her, she thought, "If I bring grandmother a fresh bouquet, she will be very pleased. It is so early in the day that I will still get there in time." So she ran off into the forest looking for flowers. Each time she picked one, she thought she could see a prettier one a little further ahead, and she went deeper and deeper into the forest. But the wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked on the door. "Who is out there?" "Little Red Riding Hood, bringing you cake and wine." "Open the door." "Just press the latch," called out the grandmother. "I'm too weak to get up." The wolf pressed the latch, and the door sprang open, and without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and swallowed her whole. Then he put on her clothes, dressed in her cap, lay down in her bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood had been running about picking flowers, and when she had gathered so many that she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother again and made her way to her. She was surprised that the door was open, and when she entered the room, she had such a strange feeling that she said to herself, "Oh dear, how anxious I feel today, and usually I like being at grandmother's." She called out, "Good morning," but received no answer. Then she went to the bed and pulled back the curtains. There lay the grandmother with her cap pulled down over her face, looking very strange. "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have! All the better to hear you with." "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have! All the better to see you with." "Oh, grandmother, what big hands you have! All the better to grab you with." "But, grandmother, what a terribly big mouth you have! All the better to eat you with." No sooner had the wolf said this than he jumped out of bed and swallowed up poor Little Red Riding Hood. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he lay down again in the bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loudly. A huntsman was just passing by and thought, "How loudly the old woman is snoring! I must see if something is wrong with her." He went into the house, and when he came to the bed, he saw that the wolf was lying in it. "Here I find you, you old sinner," said he. "I have been looking for you for a long time." He was about to shoot when he thought that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother, and she could still be saved. He did not shoot, but took a pair of scissors and started to cut open the sleeping wolf's belly. After a few cuts, he saw the red cap shining through, and after a few more cuts, the girl jumped out and cried, Oh, I was so frightened. It was so dark inside the wolf's body. And then the old grandmother came out alive as well, but could scarcely breathe. Little Red Riding Hood quickly fetched some large stones. They filled the wolf's belly with them, and when he awoke, he tried to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he collapsed and fell dead. They were all three delighted. The huntsman took the wolf's pelt. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine that Little Red Riding Hood had brought, and soon recovered. Little Red Riding Hood thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never again leave the path and run off into the woods when Mother has forbidden me to do so." It is also said that once, when Little Red Riding Hood was again taking some baked goods to her grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and wanted her to stray from the path. But Little Red Riding Hood was on her guard and went straight to her grandmother's. She told her that she had seen the wolf, who wished her good morning, but had stared at her wickedly. "If it had not been on the open road, he would have eaten me up," she said. "Come," said the grandmother, "we will lock the door so he cannot get in." Soon afterward, the wolf knocked on the door and called out, "Open up, grandmother. It's Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm bringing you some baked goods." They stayed silent and did not open the door. The gray head prowled around the house several times and finally jumped onto the roof to wait until Little Red Riding Hood went home in the evening. Then he wanted to sneak after her and eat her in the dark. But the grandmother knew what he was planning. There was a large stone trough in front of the house. She said to the child, "Fetch the bucket, Little Red Riding Hood. Yesterday I cooked sausages, so carry the water in which I boiled them to the trough." Little Red Riding Hood carried water until the large trough was full. The smell of the sausages rose up into the wolf's nose. He sniffed and peered down, stretching his neck so long that he could no longer hold himself and began to slide. He slid down from the roof right into the large trough and drowned. Little Red Riding Hood went home happily and safely, and no one harmed her. 27. The Bremen Town Musicians. Once upon a time, there was a man who had a donkey that had tirelessly carried sacks to the mill for many years. However, the donkey's strength eventually waned, making him increasingly unfit for work. The master started to consider getting rid of him, but the donkey sensed that things were taking a turn for the worse and decided to run away. He set out on a journey to Bremen, thinking he might become a town musician there. After walking for a while, he came across a hunting dog lying by the road, panting as if he had run himself tired. "Why are you panting so hard, Packin?" asked the donkey. "Oh," replied the dog, "because I am old and getting weaker by the day. I can no longer keep up on the hunt, and my master wanted to kill me, so I ran away. But now, how am I supposed to earn my bread?" "You know what?" said the donkey. "I'm going to Bremen to become a town musician. You can come with me and join the band. I'll play the lute, and you can beat the drums." The dog agreed, and they continued on their way. They hadn't gone far when they saw a cat sitting by the road, looking as sad as 3 rainy days. "What's gotten into you, old whisker wiper?" asked the donkey. "How can I be cheerful when things are so grim?" answered the cat. "Now that I'm getting old, my teeth are dull, and I'd rather sit by the stove and spin than chase after mice. My mistress wanted to drown me, so I ran away. But good advice is expensive now. Where should I go? Come with us to Bremen. You are skilled in night music, so you could become a town musician there." The cat thought that was a good idea and joined them. After that, the three runaways passed by a farmyard where a rooster was sitting on the gate, crowing with all his might. "You're screeching through marrow and bone," said the donkey. "What's going on?" "I've predicted good weather," said the rooster, "because today is our dear lady's day, when she washes the Christ child's little shirts and wants to dry them. But because guests are coming tomorrow, which is Sunday, the housewife has no pity and told the cook she wanted to eat me in the soup tomorrow. So tonight they're going to cut off my head. Now I'm crowing as loud as I can while I still can." "Well, Redhead," said the donkey, "why not come away with us? We're going to Bremen, and you can find something better than death anywhere. You have a good voice, and if we make music together, it'll be quite something." The rooster liked the idea and joined them, and they all set off together. However, they couldn't reach Bremen in one day. and by evening they found themselves in a forest where they decided to spend the night. The donkey and the dog lay down under a large tree, the cat climbed into the branches, and the rooster flew to the top where he felt safest. Before falling asleep, the rooster looked around in all directions and thought he saw a spark of light in the distance. He called to his companions, telling them that there must be a house nearby, as it seemed to be a light. The donkey said, "Then we should get up and go there, because the lodging here is poor." The dog thought a couple of bones with some meat on them would do him good too. So they set off in the direction of the light and soon saw it shining brighter and larger until they came to a brightly lit robber's house. The donkey, being the biggest, went up to the window and looked inside. "What do you see, Gray?" asked the rooster. "What I see," answered the donkey, "a table set with beautiful food and drink, and robbers sitting around enjoying themselves." "That would be something for us," said the rooster. "Yes, yes. Oh, if only we were there," said the donkey. The animals then discussed how they could drive the robbers out and finally came up with a plan. The donkey had to stand with his front legs on the window, the dog climbed on the donkey's back, the cat climbed on the dog, and finally, the rooster flew up and perched on the cat's head. Once they were in position, they began to make their music. The donkey brayed, the dog barked, the cat meowed, and the rooster crowed. Then they burst through the window into the room, shattering the glass panes. The robbers jumped up in fright, thinking that a ghost was coming in, and fled in terror into the forest. Now the four companions sat at the table, making do with what was left, and eating as if they were going to starve for a month. When they had finished, they extinguished the light and looked for a place to sleep, each according to his nature and convenience. The donkey lay down on the manure heap, the dog behind the door, the cat on the hearth near the warm ashes, and the rooster perched on the rafters. And because they were tired from their long journey, they soon fell asleep. After midnight, when the robbers saw from afar that no light was burning in the house and everything seemed quiet, the captain said, "We shouldn't have been scared off like that," and sent one to investigate the house. The one who was sent found everything still and went into the kitchen to light a candle. Seeing the glowing, fiery eyes of the cat, he mistook them for live coals and tried to light a match from them. But the cat did not understand the joke and sprang at his face, hissing and scratching. The man was terrified, ran to the back door, but the dog, who was lying there, jumped up and bit him in the leg. As he ran across the yard past the manure heap, the donkey gave him a mighty kick with his hind foot, and the rooster, who had been awakened by the noise and had become lively, called down from the rafters, "Cock-a-doodle-doo." The robber ran back as fast as he could to his captain and said, "Oh, there's a dreadful witch in the house, who breathed on me and scratched my face with her long fingers. At the door, there's a man with a knife who stabbed me in the leg. In the yard, there lies a black monster that beat me with a wooden club. And up on the roof, there sits the judge who cried, 'Bring me the scoundrel here.' So I made the best I could to get away." After that, the robbers didn't dare go back to the house, and the four Bremen musicians liked it so much there that they decided never to leave. And the one who told this last, his mouth is still warm. The Singing Bone, a fairy tale by the brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, in a certain country, there was great lamentation over a wild boar that was devastating the farmers' fields, killing livestock and tearing people apart with its tusks. The king promised a substantial reward to anyone who could rid the land of this menace. However, the beast was so large and fierce that no one dared to venture into the forest where it dwelled. Eventually, the king proclaimed that whoever captured or killed the wild boar would be given his only daughter in marriage. In this country lived two brothers, the sons of a poor man, who volunteered to undertake this perilous task. The elder brother, who was cunning and shrewd, accepted out of pride, the younger brother, who was innocent and simple-hearted, out of goodness. The king said, "To increase your chances of finding the beast, you should enter the forest from opposite sides." Thus, the elder brother entered from the west, and the younger brother from the east. After the younger brother had walked a short distance, a little man appeared before him. Holding a black spear in his hand, the little man said, "I give you this spear because your heart is pure and good. With it, you can fearlessly face the wild boar, and it will do you no harm. The younger brother thanked the little man, took the spear on his shoulder, and proceeded without fear. It wasn't long before he saw the beast charging at him. He held out the spear, and in its blind rage, the boar ran so forcefully into it that its heart was split in two. He then hoisted the monstrous creature onto his shoulders and set off to present it to the king. When he emerged from the forest on the other side, he came upon a house where people were merrily dancing and drinking wine. His elder brother had gone in here, thinking that the boar wouldn't run away and that he could muster his courage with some wine. Seeing his younger brother coming out of the forest with his prize, envy and malice filled his heart. He called out, "Come in, dear brother, rest and refresh yourself with a cup of wine." The younger brother, suspecting no evil, entered and recounted the story of the good little man who had given him the spear that killed the boar. The elder brother kept him there until evening, and then they set off together. As they reached a bridge over a brook in the darkness, the elder brother let the younger go first, and when he was halfway across, the elder struck him from behind, causing him to fall dead into the water below. He buried his body under the bridge, took the boar, and presented it to the king, claiming that he had killed it. Consequently, he was rewarded with the king's daughter in marriage. When the younger brother did not return, he said the boar must have killed him, and everyone believed him. However, as nothing remains hidden from God, this dark deed was eventually brought to light. Many years later, a shepherd was driving his herd across the bridge and saw a snow-white bone lying in the sand below. Thinking it would make a fine mouthpiece for his horn, he climbed down, picked it up, and carved it into a mouthpiece. When he blew through it for the first time, to his great astonishment, the bone began to sing by itself. "Ah, dear shepherd, you blow on my bone. Long have I lain beside the water. My brother slew me for the boar and buried me under the bridge to win the king's daughter." "What a wondrous horn!" exclaimed the shepherd. "It sings on its own. I must take it to my lord, the king." When he brought it to the king, the horn once again sang its little song. The king understood the meaning and ordered the ground under the bridge to be excavated. The entire skeleton of the murdered man was revealed. The wicked brother could not deny his crime and was sewn into a sack and drowned alive. The bones of the murdered younger brother were laid to rest in a beautiful grave in the churchyard. The Devil with the Three Golden Hairs, a fairy tale by the Brothers Grimm. Once upon a time, there was a poor woman who gave birth to a son, and because he was born with a caul, it was prophesied that in his 14th year he would marry the king's daughter. It happened that soon afterward the king came to the village, unrecognized by the people, and when he asked what news there was, they answered, "In these days, a child has been born with a caul. Whatever such a child undertakes turns out successfully. It has also been prophesied that in his 14th year he will marry the king's daughter." The king, who had a wicked heart and was angered by the prophecy, went to the parents, acted kindly, and said, "You poor people, entrust your child to me, and I will take care of him." At first, they refused, but when the stranger offered heavy gold for it and they thought, "It is a lucky child, it must turn out for the best for him," they finally agreed and gave him the child. The king placed him in a box and rode on until he came to a deep water. There he threw the box into it, thinking, "I have rid myself of my daughter's unexpected suitor." However, the box did not sink, but floated like a little boat, and not a drop of water penetrated it. It floated until it reached a mill dam, 2 miles from the king's capital, where it got stuck. A miller's boy who luckily was there noticed it, pulled it in with a hook, expecting to find great treasures. But when he opened it, there lay a handsome boy inside, fresh and lively. He brought him to the miller and his wife, who had no children and were overjoyed, saying, "God has bestowed him upon us." They cared for the foundling diligently, and he grew up in all virtues. It happened that during a thunderstorm, the king visited the mill and asked the miller if the tall youth was their son. "No," they answered, "he is a foundling. 14 years ago, he floated down to the mill dam in a box, and the mill boy pulled him out of the water." Then the king realized that it was none other than the lucky child he had thrown into the water, and he said, "Good people, Could the boy take a letter to the queen? I will give him 2 gold pieces as a reward. As the king commands, they answered, and instructed the boy to be ready. So the king wrote a letter to the queen, stating, "As soon as the boy arrives with this letter, he is to be killed and buried, and all must be done before I return." The boy set out with this letter but lost his way, and in the evening came to a large forest. In the darkness, he saw a small light, went towards it, and reached a cottage. An old woman sat alone by the fire, and startled when she saw the boy, asking, "Where do you come from? And where are you going?" "I come from the mill," he answered, "and I am going to the queen to deliver a letter. But I have lost my way in the forest, so I would like to stay here overnight." "You poor boy," said the woman, "you have come into a den of thieves, and when they come home, they will kill you." "Let them come," said the boy. "I am not afraid, but I am so tired that I can't go any farther." And he stretched himself on a bench and fell asleep. Soon after, the robbers returned and angrily asked who the strange boy lying there was. "Ah," said the old woman, "he is an innocent child who has lost his way in the forest, and out of pity, I have let him in. He is to deliver a letter to the queen." The robbers opened the letter and read it, finding that it ordered the boy to be killed as soon as he arrived. Then the hard-hearted robbers felt pity, and their leader tore up the letter and wrote another, stating that upon the boy's arrival, he should be immediately married to the king's daughter. They let him sleep peacefully on the bench until the next morning, and when he awoke, they gave him the letter and showed him the correct path. When the queen received and read the letter, she did as it instructed, organizing a splendid wedding feast, and the king's daughter was married to the lucky child. Since the youth was handsome and amiable, she lived happily and contentedly with him. Some time later, the king returned to his palace and saw that the prophecy had been fulfilled, and the lucky child was married to his daughter. "How did this happen?" he asked. "I gave a different order in my letter." So the queen handed him the letter and told him to see for himself what was written in it. The king read the letter and realized that it had been switched with another. He asked the youth what had happened to the letter entrusted to him and why he had brought a different one. "I know nothing about it," he answered. "It must have been switched during the night when I slept in the forest." Full of anger, the king said, "You shall not have everything so easily. Whoever marries my daughter must fetch me 3 golden hairs from the devil's head. Bring me what I demand, and you shall keep my daughter." In this way, the king hoped to be rid of him forever. But the lucky child answered, "I will fetch the golden hairs. I am not afraid of the devil." And so he took leave and began his journey. The path led him to a large city, where the gatekeeper asked him what trade he understood and what he knew. "I know everything," answered the lucky child. "Then you can do us a favor," said the gatekeeper. "If you can tell us why our market fountain, from which wine used to flow, has dried up and no longer gives even water." "You shall learn that," he replied. "Just wait until I return." He continued on and arrived at another city, where the gatekeeper again asked what trade he understood and what he knew. "I know everything," he answered. "Then you can do us a favor and tell us why a tree in our city, which used to bear golden apples, now does not even produce leaves." "You shall learn that," he replied. "Just wait until I return." He continued on and arrived at a large body of water that he had to cross. The ferryman asked him what trade he understood and what he knew. "I know everything," he answered. "Then you can do me a favor," said the ferryman, "and tell me why I always have to go back and forth and am never relieved." "You shall learn that," he replied. "Just wait until I return." After crossing the water, he found the entrance to hell. It was black and sooty inside, and the devil was not at home, but his grandmother sat there in a wide armchair. "What do you want?" she said to him, not looking so angry. "I would like to have 3 golden hairs from the devil's head," he replied. "Otherwise, I cannot keep my wife." "That is a lot to ask," she said. "If the devil comes home and finds you, you will be in trouble. But I pity you. I will see if I can help." She transformed him into an ant and said, "Crawl into my skirt folds. There you will be safe." "Yes," he replied. "That's good. But there are 3 things I would still like to know. Why a fountain, from which wine used to flow, has dried up and does not even give water anymore? Why a tree, which used to bear golden apples, now does not even produce leaves, and why a ferryman must always go back and forth and is never relieved. Those are difficult questions, she replied, but just stay quiet and pay attention to what the devil says when I pull out the 3 golden hairs. When evening fell, the devil came home. As soon as he entered, he sensed that something was amiss. I smell human flesh, he said. Something is not right here. Then he looked into every corner and searched but found nothing. The grandmother scolded him. I just cleaned up, she said, and got everything in order. Now you're stirring it up again. You always smell human flesh. Sit down and eat your supper. After he had eaten and drunk, he was tired, laid his head in the grandmother's lap, and asked her to scratch him a little. Before long, he fell asleep, snoring loudly. The old woman seized a golden hair, pulled it out, and laid it beside her. Ouch! Screamed the devil. What are you doing? I had a bad dream, answered the grandmother, so I grabbed your hair. What did you dream? Asked the devil. I dreamed that a market fountain from which wine used to flow had dried up and not even water would come out anymore. What could be the cause? Ha! If they only knew, answered the devil. There is a toad under a stone in the fountain. If they kill it, the wine will flow again. The grandmother scratched him again until he fell asleep and snored so loudly that the windows rattled. Then she pulled out the second hair. Ugh! What are you doing? Screamed the angry devil. Don't take it personally, she replied. I did it in my dream. What did you dream this time? He asked. I dreamed that in a kingdom there stood a tree that used to bear golden apples, but now does not even produce leaves. What could be the cause of that? Ha! If they only knew, answered the devil. There is a mouse gnawing at the root. If they kill it, the tree will bear golden apples again, but if it keeps gnawing, the tree will wither completely. But leave me alone with your dreams. If you disturb my sleep again, I'll slap you. The grandmother appeased him and scratched him again until he fell asleep. Then she seized the third golden hair and pulled it out. The devil jumped up, shouting and wanting to harm her, but she calmed him down once more and said, Who can control bad dreams? What did you dream this time? He asked, though curious. I dreamed about a ferryman who complained that he always had to go back and forth and was never relieved. What could be the cause? Ha, the fool, answered the devil. When someone comes and wants to cross, he must give him the oar. Then the other must row across, and he is free. After the grandmother had pulled out the 3 golden hairs and answered the 3 questions, she left the old dragon in peace, and he slept until dawn. When the devil had gone away again, the old woman took the ant out of her skirt fold and restored the lucky child to human form. Here are the 3 golden hairs, she said. You must have heard what the devil said in response to your 3 questions. Yes, he replied. I heard it and will remember it well. Then you are helped, she said, and now you can go on your way. He thanked the old woman for her help in his need, left hell, and was pleased that everything had turned out so well for him. When he arrived home to his wife, she was overjoyed to see him again and to hear that everything had gone so well for him. He brought the king what he had asked for, the 3 golden hairs of the devil, and when the king saw the 4 donkeys laden with gold, he was completely delighted and said, Now all conditions are fulfilled, and you can keep my daughter. But dear son-in-law, tell me, where did all this gold come from? These are tremendous treasures. I crossed a river, he answered, and there I took it. It lies there on the bank instead of sand. Can I also go and get some? Said the king eagerly. As much as you want, he replied. There is a ferryman on the river. Let him ferry you across, and you can fill your sacks over there. The greedy king hurriedly set off on his way, and when he came to the river, he signaled to the ferryman to ferry him across. The ferryman came and told him to get in, and when they reached the opposite bank, he handed him the oar and jumped away. But from then on, the king had to ferry back and forth as punishment for his sins. Does he still ferry? What do you think? No one has taken the oar from him. 30. The Louse and the Flea. A little louse and a flea lived together in a household and brewed beer in an eggshell. Then the little louse fell into it and burned itself. Upon this, the little flea began to scream loudly. Then the small room door said, Why are you screaming, little flea? Because the louse has burned itself. Then the little door began to creak. Then a little broom in the corner said, "Why are you creaking, little door?" "Should I not creak? The louse has burned itself. The flea is weeping." Then the little broom began to sweep frantically. Then a little cart passed by and said, "Why are you sweeping, little broom? Should I not sweep? The louse has burned itself. The flea is weeping. The door is creaking." Then the little cart said, "Then I will run," and began to run wildly. Then said the ash heap by which it ran, "Why are you running so, little cart? Should I not run? The louse has burned itself. The flea is weeping. The door is creaking. The broom is sweeping." Then the ash heap said, "Then I will burn furiously," and began to burn in clear flames. A little tree stood near the ash heap and said, "Ash heap, why are you burning? Should I not burn? The louse has burned itself. The flea is weeping. The door is creaking. The broom is sweeping. The cart is running." The little tree said, "Then I will shake myself," and began to shake so that all its leaves fell off. A girl who came up with her water pitcher saw that and said, "Little tree, why are you shaking yourself? Should I not shake myself? The louse has burned itself. The flea is weeping. The door is creaking. The broom is sweeping. The cart is running. The ash heap is burning." Upon this, the girl said, "Then I will break my little water pitcher." And she broke her little water pitcher. Then said the little spring from which the water flowed, "Girl, why are you breaking your water jug?" "Should I not break my water jug? The louse has burned itself. The flea is weeping. The door is creaking. The broom is sweeping. The cart is running. The ash heap is burning. The tree is shaking itself." "Oh," said the spring, "then I will begin to flow," and began to flow violently. And in the water, everything was drowned: the girl, the little tree, the ash heap, the cart, the broom, the door, the flea, the louse, all together.